Rett syndrome is caused from a gene mutation, and it's on the X chromosome. You know, girls have 2 X chromosomes, boys have an X and a Y, and it's a mutation that occurs on the X chromosome. It's a neurodevelopmental disorder, and so it basically causes a deterioration of anything neurological. So that means that if you have someone who is developing normally and then you start to see a digression take place, that's how it affects the neurological status. Things start to regress instead of progress. It can be diagnosed through blood work that identifies a specific gene mutation on the X chromosome. I think that it detects the MECP2 gene mutation. I think that's the particular mutation that it looks for. But one thing that is interesting is that even though it's a genetic disorder, it's not inherited from the father or the mother. It's a spontaneous mutation that occurs predominantly in girls because girls have the 2 X chromosomes. If it's ever in a boy, because they only have the 1 X chromosome, then it's typically very fatal, very, very early on. So they would die in infancy, whereas girls can live all the way up until middle age. There is treatment for the symptoms. There's not a treatment that would be curative. So any sort of treatment would be treating the symptoms and would be supportive. So that would be things such as providing physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, things that would try to not really slow down the progression, but just optimize what ability someone may have to use their hands or to use some of their larger muscles or the ability to be able to communicate. It's different. It varies, just like the severity of it varies, but typically females can live a very long time, all the way up into middle adulthood, and most of them do. It's usually a long, drawn-out disorder.
So for Alyssa, good and bad days can come and go at the drop of a hat. A good day can turn bad pretty quick. A good day for us is she always wakes up happy, but then good days are no seizures. Good days are minimal breath holding or hyperventilating. Girls with Rett syndrome have irregular breathing patterns, so the less of that interferes with her every day makes it a better day. With Rett syndrome, they don't have as much control over their movements, so some days she can be very tremory and other days are less tremors. So those are kind of our good days. Our bad days can be multiple seizures in a day. After a seizure, she sleeps. She tends to have back-to-back seizures. She'll have a seizure, fall asleep, wake up, have another one, go back to sleep, where we have to medicate her strongly, and that can cause her to sleep for long periods of time. Some days her sensory input is very sensitive, and little things like being in a classroom with a lot of kids or people walking up and down the hallway loudly could set off a sensory issue, and she may be crying for some unknown reason and we can't really figure out what it is. Another thing that can make it a bad day is if she's sick. She has no way of really telling us what's wrong. If she doesn't have her communication device, or if she can't get her muscle movement to select the right thing on the communication device, then that can be very frustrating for her and for us. So those are kind of our good and bad days. She was diagnosed May 3rd, 2012. She was 3.5. We had the testing done the month of her 3rd birthday. So, so that way, for her, it was a little bit later. A lot of girls now are being diagnosed earlier in life. But her regression, the state where she regressed and lost her hand use and her words, and developed her irregular breathing patterns, was a little later, right before her 3rd birthday. She had already lost her speech. She had already lost her ability to walk, but the other telltale signs of Rett syndrome, like the hand stereotypies and the irregular breathing patterns, didn't come till later. So that's why she was diagnosed around 3. For communication, she uses a Toby, which is a eye gaze communication device, because girls with Rett syndrome can't use their hands. A typical communication device where you have to point and touch the symbols doesn't really work for her. So she has a Toby that has a pretty in-depth language system on it, and she uses her eyes to communicate. As far as everyday functioning, she obviously has a wheelchair. She has foot braces. She uses a gait trainer, which is a little more supportive than just a walker. She has a stander to help strengthen her legs. So those are her typical pieces of equipment that we use every day. So Alyssa is functioning. It varies. Her receptive language is pretty on target with a typical 8-year-old. She understands a lot of what is going on in the general ed classroom. She understands a lot of the material that's presented. As far as her expressive language, is still very weak because she missed the first 3 to 4 years of communication. She didn't get her communication device until she was 4 years old. So she's probably communicating on like a 3-year-old level, just with her ability to expressively identify what she's wanting to say through the use of the Toby. As far as academically, she's doing 1st grade level math, 1st grade level writing, and end of kindergarten reading. So that's kind of her level of functioning. In general, girls with Rett syndrome, up until probably 6 years ago, they were all listed as being significantly intellectually disabled. Everybody thought that their brain was deteriorating when they hit their regression. Studies now have shown that their brain is really not impacted as much as most people had thought. You do still have a range. You do have some girls still that do have some pretty significant intellectual disabilities and are very low functioning, but you have a large majority of our girls that are showing they are able to learn, function, function well cognitively from what they hear. The problem is a lot of teachers aren't equipped to know how to teach a child that can't speak, can't use their hands, can't walk. Even a lot of our standardized testing, they have some that's for children who are nonverbal, but most of that requires them to use building blocks or to point to answers or to circle or select or code things or write things down. So when you take both of those components, a lot of teachers, myself included, we didn't learn that in college. You didn't learn how to work with kids who were nonverbal and couldn't walk and couldn't use their hands. So a lot of teachers out there just don't know the best ways to instruct. So a lot of our education is moving towards teaching professionals how to, get inside their head and figure out exactly what they know and help them move forward.